The history of firebending. Firebending, one of the 4 elemental bending arts, is the pyrokinetic ability to control fire. It is unique among the bending arts as it is the only one in which the performer can generate the element. The first human firebenders lived in a city atop a lion turtle during the era of Raava, and the art later spread to the Sun Warriors, the Fire Nation, and the United Republic of Nations. The Earth Kingdom also has a small firebending minority. As described by Iro, fire is the element of power, consisting of overpowering force tempered by the unflinching will to accomplish tasks and desires. However, during the 100-Year War, a militaristic Fire Nation twisted this into firebending being fueled by rage, hatred, and anger. Firebending draws its power from the sun, and the first human firebenders derived their firebending techniques from the dragons. Firebending is known for its intense and aggressive attacking style and general lack of adequate defensive moves, although firebenders can modify offensive maneuvers to function as a defense, such as creating large walls of fire or shooting down incoming attacks with fire jabs. Welcome to the Amagi. In today's video, we're going over the history of firebending. Before we begin, we publish new content every week, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. During the era of Raava, people received the element of fire from the fire lion turtle that was the guardian of their city, who would grant them the power with energy bending. They could request it whenever they ventured into the spirit wilds and were to return it when they came back. However, Juan stole the power to better his life and that of his impoverished friends, but was captured and banished. He was allowed to keep the power of fire to protect himself and eventually befriended the spirits. As such, he managed to hone his skills by learning the proper way of bending from the dragons that lived in the spirit wilds. He developed his style in such a manner that his fire became an extension of his body rather than a mere tool for protection as the others perceived it. Others learned of his survival and also set out into the spirit wilds with the power of fire, no longer wanting to live under the poor conditions they had in the city. In the years following, people learned firebending from the dragons that had once populated the land. The first people in the era of the Avatar to learn from the dragons were the Sun Warriors, who understood the connection between the fire of their souls, the fire of the dragons, and the sun. In the remains of their once great civilization, Zuko and Aang discovered that firebending represents energy and life, a concept that had been lost to nearly all firebenders in the 100-Year War. The true meaning of firebending was forgotten, as anger, rage, and a desire to dominate began to replace the ideals of life and energy and how they connect to the sun. The royal family encouraged this to aid in the propaganda that fire could be used as a tool to destroy and that the 100-Year War justified. Firebenders draw their power from the sun and other solar objects such as comets, as well as the fiery core of the planet. A solar eclipse has the potential to completely negate a firebender's power, which is the result of a direct connection between the sun and firebending. Additionally, after defeating Katara at sunrise during the Siege of the North, Zuko stated that she rose with the moon, but he rose with the sun, further referencing the sun's importance to firebending. Firebenders are also said to draw power from volcanic energy and lightning. Spirituality in firebending. In 0 AG, Fire Lord Sozin launched a genocidal attack on the air nomads, succeeding in part due to the power granted to him by a passing comet. Over the course of a century, the war continued, and under the rule of Sozin's grandson, the Fire Lord Ozai, the Fire Nation saw the return of Sozin's comet. As prophesied, the comet's immense energy granted Ozai the power to conquer the entire world. The only threat to Ozai's campaign was the Avatar, Aang. Aang succeeded in his quest to defeat Ozai, and he satisfied his spiritual needs by not taking Ozai's life, but simply by removing his ability to firebend. The Fire Nation's religious clerics, the Fire Sages, once served the Avatar, but they were eventually forced to endorse the Imperial War. Shiyu was the only Fire Sage to remain true to his allegiance to the Avatar, a trait he inherited from his father and grandfather. A firebender's powers seem to increase during the day in the presence of the sun. Because of this solar sympathy, their powers are weakened at night, and a solar eclipse can temporarily negate their powers entirely, much like waterbenders' powers are negated during a lunar eclipse. Aside from their main power source, the sun, firebenders also draw their energy from other heat sources, including volcanic activity, lightning, and passing comets, if they somehow become a heat source, such as Sozin's comet, which ignites when it brushes the atmosphere. A firebender's power is intensified in warmer climates, and at its peak when it's situated near their native equatorial homelands during the summer. Firebending's distinctiveness is in its uncontrolled nature. Fire, if left to itself, will consume everything it can. Firebending is thus a matter of controlling an element rather than directing it. Many firebenders are intoxicated by their power, while more prudent ones feel cursed by it, much like Jiang. However, its roots and nature are fully explored by Ran and Shaw and the Sun Warriors. Properly controlled, fire is life and industry, comforting and creative. Fighting style. Firebenders use their chi as a source for their bending. This facet of firebending is a sharp contrast to the other bending arts, which manipulate already present sources of their element, though firebenders can also control or enhance flames nearby. Firebending uses concentrated barrages of fire to overwhelm opponents before striking a fatal blow. Swift, whirling kicks and punches generate diverse shapes for offensive attacks. This strategy is probably what makes firebending arguably the most suited to pro-bending out of all the bending arts. Firebending tactics and forms have required little modification for use in pro-bending, the most noticeable difference in the restriction on the use of prolonged fire streams. Nevertheless, quick flurries of kicks and punches allow a pro-bending firebender to retain excellent mobility around the arena, while simultaneously trying to push back the members of the opposing team. Circular motion is also a crucial element to the skill, as it seems to power up and enhance the firebender's flames. When creating lightning, the firebenders often move their arms in slow circular motions, similar to waterbenders but with more tension. Enhanced firebending. Due to its solar augmentation, firebending is slightly stronger during the day, being at its most powerful around noon. With an extraterrestrial heat source much closer to the planet than the Sun, in particular Sozin's comet, firebending is enhanced dramatically. A firebender under the effects of the comet can produce much larger, powerful flames, which create greater destruction and can extend much further than usual. Experienced firebenders can use the comet's power to sustain flight, generate exceptionally powerful lightning bolts, and perform other feats of firebending which they would usually be incapable of executing. Opposing bending art. Firebending is the opposing art to waterbending, though they share facets of self-control, diversity, and variation in strength due to external forces and strong emotions. Firebenders use quick, strong punches and kicks to shoot fire, while waterbenders use smooth movements and elegant turns and spins to return the momentum of the opponent's attacks. Firebenders attack first, while waterbenders wait and turn their target's attacks against them. However, in 170 AG, these differences are no longer as strong as in the centuries before. Many waterbenders of the United Republic of Nations, a new-founded country of the world, have adapted a fighting style which is based primarily on sheer strength and speed. For example, criminals, task force members, and even Councilman Tarlock tried to defeat their opponents with surprising, aggressive first strikes, a tactic typical of firebenders. However, this new fighting style is restricted mainly to the waterbenders of the Republic. The two bending arts are also opposed by their celestial power source. Firebending is fueled by the sun, waterbending by the moon. This is best demonstrated during a duel fought between Zuko and Katara. At night, during the full moon, Katara quickly battered Zuko into submission and froze him against a wall. However, at sunrise, Zuko effortlessly melted the ice holding him in place and defeated Katara with one short fire blast. Like all bending arts, firebending is balanced out as to not be more or less powerful than the other arts. It has repeatedly been illustrated that it is the skill and prowess of the user that determines victory. Weapons. Firebenders sometimes incorporate weapons into firebending, such as Zuko's utilization of firebending in conjunction with his dual broadswords, shaping and channeling the flames down the blade of his weapons. Firebending weaknesses. Firebending has multiple weaknesses. The first is extreme cold. Cold temperatures reduce or even completely negate a firebender's abilities. The Boiling Rock prison uses insulated chambers, the coolers, and piped-in cold air as a punishment for those prisoners who used firebending, as the freezers prevented them from bending. The same principle was used to detain Pali in the depths of the icy tundra of the North Pole. However, skilled firebenders in control of breath of fire can use this technique to stay warm and keep using their firebending. Another weakness is the full moon. With waterbending becoming stronger with it, and firebending being water's opposite element, the full moon weakens firebending to some degree. Lack of defense is also a weakness. The major combat weakness behind the applied art of firebending is its confrontational nature. Due to its aggressiveness in pursuit of continuous assault, it traditionally lacks basic defensive techniques, which can leave an inexperienced bender considerably vulnerable to enemy counterattacks, though masters such as Jiang can effectively use firebending for defense. It also consumes a vast amount of energy, leaving the bender at a considerable disadvantage in a prolonged battle. A common mark of a firebending master is the ability to sustain attacks for long periods. Then, there's lack of drive. In order to firebend properly, one must have inner fire, his or her drive, without which one's firebending becomes weak. After joining the Avatar, Zuko's firebending became noticeably weaker, because for 3 years, hunting the Avatar was his drive. Aang, being traumatized by his first experience with firebending, was too afraid to give it some juice, as said by Zuko. Both overcame their problems after meeting with the masters Ron and Shaw, who taught them the true meaning of firebending, restoring their drives. Firebending also has some obvious weaknesses. A firebender's power may decrease in any situation which might extinguish their flames, such as being underwater or caught in the rain. Zuko overcame this while underwater in the North Pole by melting ice by heating it with direct contact. Poor breath control is another weakness. According to Iroh, true firebending power comes not from physical size or strength, but rather from the very control of one's breath. This was first explained and demonstrated by Iroh, an overweight, squat man with no exceptional strength or physique. However, this did not stop him from being one of the most powerful firebenders in the world. Firebender discipline stresses self-restraint and breath control as a means of directing and containing the fire manifested. Poor breath control means dangerously poor control of any fire generated. For this reason, breathing exercises are one of the most critical first steps for beginning firebenders. The next weakness is poor self-control. Though anger, rage, and other intense emotions can amplify the power of firebending, it can lead to dangerous explosions or wildfires, and can also cause any nearby flames to burn out of control. The enlightened firebending master Jiang repeatedly stressed this importance during his instruction of Aang, who accidentally burned Katara when he refused to listen, and a lack of self-control was demonstrated by Zhao during his fight with Aang. The last weakness is a solar eclipse. Firebending's connection to the sun results in a lessening of strength during the night, and a complete loss of firebending during a solar eclipse. Agni Kai. Among firebenders, or at least those of the upper class, disputes of honor are settled by a challenge to an Agni Kai, or fire duel, a traditional firebender duel that is centuries old. Such a duel is constructed in an open-air arena, and it may be witnessed by spectators. The traditional time for an Agni Kai is a sunset or sunrise, though it is not a requirement. While not an explicit condition, in the post-Sozin Fire Nation, Agni Kai have become almost exclusively duels to the death. The victor may spare the defeated, but it is generally looked upon as an act of weakness rather than generosity. The duel is traditionally fought bare-chested, and the contestants may have 1 or more seconds, i.e. people who stand around in that person's corner of the field and may attend to their champion before and after the duel, or bear them away in case they die fighting. The opening pose of an Agni Kai is squatting with his back turned to the opponent. During this phase, both contestants traditionally wear a red and black shawl over their bare shoulders, which is dropped upon turning to face each other. It is considered dishonorable to attack from behind in an Agni Kai, especially for a defeated opponent who has been spared by the victor. Notable Agni Kais include Zuko's first public Agni Kai against his father, the Agni Kai between Zuko and Zhao, and most notably the Comet-enhanced Agni Kai between Zuko and Azula, which was fought for the right to the throne. Did you enjoy our video? Be sure to check out these other great videos from the Amagi, and make sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.